Once upon a time, strange towers started appearing all around the world. Nobody knew where they came from or why they suddenly appeared. People wondered if they would disappear after a day or two. However, some individuals who had encountered these towers noticed similarities to the mythologies they had read. It seemed like someone had copied those stories. Some people found it exciting and eagerly anticipated meeting the heroes from their admired tales. Little did they know, these towers brought chaos instead of rainbows and unicorns. The world that was once peaceful became a place filled with monsters and dungeons. If they didn't take action soon, their world would be destroyed, and humanity would face extinction. To protect their home, people began analyzing the towers and destroying the dungeons. These brave individuals came to be known as dungeon adventurers. A young boy named Youngman sat in front of a massive TV, watching these dungeon adventurers in awe. He admired them and dreamt of being like them, saving lives and having everyone in the world know his name. It was so cool. And thus, a future dungeon adventurer was born. However, achieving such dreams required hard work, determination, and perseverance. Youngman devoted himself to studying every day without fail. His knowledge grew bit by bit as he learned about mana, mutation, and delved into the nation's literature on these subjects. He excelled in the written exam, securing the top rank and gaining admission to the prestigious Adventurer Academy. At that moment, he felt overjoyed, as if he were floating on cloud nine. Finally, he could follow in the footsteps of his idols and become a dungeon adventurer. But sometimes, what we think is meant for us might be meant for someone else. Not all dreams can be fulfilled, but the steps we take, the efforts we make, and the lessons we learn can be building blocks for a new dream. During his second year at the academy, Youngman's rank plummeted from the top to 274th place. Disappointment filled his thoughts. He believed there were obstacles he would never overcome, no matter how hard he tried. Some great achievements might be out of reach, no matter how much effort we put in. That must be the case for him. He trained tirelessly, tried to improve his skills, and learn new techniques, but he couldn't succeed. He had no control over his body, no special abilities like the dungeon adventurers possessed. So, he packed his belongings, took a leave of absence, and left the academy. He gave up on his dream of becoming an adventurer, feeling like his years of effort had been wasted. All of these events took place 2 years ago, so Youngman should be in his third year by now if he hadn't quit. Instead of chasing impossible dreams, he settled for more modest ones. He became a writer of fictional stories, crafting tales about a swordsman who could slice through the horizon, a hunter who lived their entire life in the forest of death, and a magic creator. These were things he couldn't achieve in reality, a way to cover up his unfulfilled aspirations. After typing a few more lines on his keyboard, he was almost finished with his current story. Exhaustion was evident on his face, his hair was disheveled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. Too tired to complete the ending of the last chapter, he slumped onto his bed to rest, planning to finish it when he woke up. Contrary to his words, Youngman reached for the remote beside him and turned on the TV. The news featured a dungeon adventurer named Rachel, who had completed a mission in the United States and was returning to Korea. As he watched her peaceful expression on the screen, she claimed that they were getting closer to achieving world peace as they cleared most of the towers. Youngman was instantly captivated. At such a young age, this female adventurer had accomplished such a mission, and the fact that it was successful was incredibly cool to him. His eyebrows furrowed, and he pouted, impressed by her achievements. He often wondered why, even though he worked harder than anyone else, he didn't possess that special ability. Gradually, his sulking turned into irritation. He buried his face in the pillow, trying to push those thoughts out of his mind. Then, he covered himself with the blanket and forced himself to fall asleep. Little did he know, amazing things were happening while he was in a deep slumber. The world is currently searching for a new record to build a tower. They found the perfect location described in a novel from Youngman's files that can be used for the tower. On that night, a new tower was constructed. The sun's rays greeted Youngman as he woke up to a fresh morning. He squinted and furrowed his brows when he noticed that he had forgotten to turn off the TV the previous night. The television was showing the news reporter from last night who was describing an extraordinary event where 5 new towers were built across the country. The towers were named Swords That Cut the Horizon, Executor of Evil, the Black Divine Spear, and so on. Youngman was stunned. His jaw dropped when he heard those familiar names. Before he could recover, another breaking news flashed on the screen. 2 more towers had been added, making a total of 7, according to the reporter. The association expected these towers to be among the best. Yeoman's eyes widened. He was astonished by the current happenings. Why were the characters from his novel mentioned in the news? Was he going crazy? He couldn't have misheard it, though. He knew the names of his characters better than anyone else in the world. Feeling a bit panicked, he quickly got out of bed and reached for his laptop. To his surprise, his laptop was cleaned and looked brand new. His files were gone, and his novels had disappeared. He stared at the screen, feeling like everything was falling apart. Even the original documents he had saved were lost. His knees turned weak, and he involuntarily dropped to the floor. The news was still playing, reporting that the government would make an announcement about these newly built towers that night. The association had made stabilizing the dungeon their top priority. Pyeongmin, on the other hand, remained frozen in place. He even questioned if he was still dreaming. "You should pinch yourself, Yeoman," a hologram suddenly appeared, just like the one from last night. It stated that the novel he had written, The Age of Destruction, had been chosen by the world to be turned into a tower. Yeoman's eyebrows almost merged into one line. It was clear that he was truly lost. To make sense of the situation, he had to carefully sort it out. But the hologram revealed that the world had already built a tower based on his novel. Once again, he was shocked to the core. It felt like his novel had been copied. The hologram displayed the following information: his name, Han Young-nam, as the sole author of the story, the true owner of the 7 towers, his unique immersion ability, and his status. He was confused, wondering what on earth was happening. Several minutes passed, and Yeoman remained seated on the floor, trying to understand the connections between all the events. His novels had mysteriously disappeared, and new towers and characters with names from his novel were reported by the press. There were more than just a couple of issues, but he had to deal with this first. The hologram stated that he had unlocked a unique ability called Soul Class and acquired the immersion ability. How could someone like him possess these abilities when he didn't have any talents to begin with? A mischievous grin appeared on his face. He realized that with this ability, he could become an attacker. A few days went by, and Pyeongmin was still found sitting on the floor. This time, he was holding a can of beer. He stared at the image in front of him, his eyes getting heavy. It all seemed like a pointless fantasy to him. He had made countless attempts to activate his so-called immersion ability, stressing himself out and feeling frustrated with his failed efforts. A sudden flush on the screen made him angry. His mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan that fulfilled all the requirements. He thought having a soul class was a good thing, but it turned out to be the opposite. Before he completely lost his mind, he decided to get up and buy more beer instead. He considered which emotions, values, thoughts, test results, MBTI, wishes, or perhaps love he should immerse himself in. Just as he was contemplating, a familiar voice called his name, interrupting his thoughts. He was deeply focused on how to apply his new skill. She called him boss. At that moment, when Yeoman recognized Saren's familiar face, he stopped being surprised and started feeling more at ease. The girl had long blonde hair and beautiful bright blue eyes. Her full name was Lee Saren. She possessed a unique ability called Ice World and happened to be their neighbor. When her mother asked him to mentor her, they became close. She was also a junior student at the academy. However, he had never crossed paths with her during his time there as he had purposely avoided her, fearing that she might also hear the rumors. Saren was always full of joy and brought cheer wherever she went. She smiles and greets the young men in a charming way, shaking their hands. "It's been a while," she says. One of the young men becomes tense when Saren reaches out to hold both of his hands. Luckily, she lets go after a few seconds, otherwise, I would have thought he was frozen or motionless like a corpse. Sarah notices that the young man is drinking alcohol in broad daylight. Showing a bit of concern, she asks him if he has eaten yet because drinking on an empty stomach could lead to health issues and even death. In his defense, he tells Saren that he was just buying something to eat. However, Youngman can't hide the alcohol's effects in his body. Saren's eyes widen in surprise and her lips form a slight curve. She advises Youngman to eat a proper meal instead of relying on instant foods. Ignoring her advice, Youngman tries to change the subject and asks her about life at the academy. Going along with the change, she mentions that Youngman used to be very famous at the academy. Saren explains that he even received a job offer from the highly regarded Heavenly Mansion Guild to work as an analyst, which is considered one of the top 3 guilds in the country. It's known that mere good grades are not enough to secure a spot there. Despite that, Youngman gained fame by rejecting the offer. Youngman is surprised that someone still knows about that incident. Saren is about to ask why he turned down the offer, but Youngman interrupts her. He doesn't intend to share that story with anyone. Suddenly, Youngman starts feeling different, and the atmosphere around them changes. Plas detects the energy of Everton Gilman and quickly scans the surroundings. A guy standing nearby is enveloped in a dark aura. He is a follower of the demon. Youngman realizes he shouldn't be there and wonders why a demon follower would appear in such a place. When Saren asks if something is wrong, Youngman snaps out of his thoughts and replies with a no. Saren is startled when the demon follower suddenly collapses on the floor. She is about to rush to his aid, but Youngman manages to stop her. Dark smoke emerges from the fallen man's body. Everton's devotee has summoned a vicious wolf. Youngman and Saren are filled with panic and shock. As expected, more wolves appear. Their mouths drool with hunger, indicating their readiness to devour anyone in their path. With brown fur covering their bodies and devilish horns on their skulls, their gaze alone could cut through anything. The marketplace descends into chaos as people run in different directions, unsure where to go. Amidst the chaos, there is a group that despises the 7 heroes and is willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their goals. People start calling them the demon-worshipping group. This is all happening in Youngman's novel. While Saren tries to figure out ways to help and save people, Youngman stands frozen like an ice block. Initially, she urges Youngman to act quickly, but then remembers her boss might not possess his unique ability yet. So she decides to take action herself. However, Youngman speaks up. He suggests that he will lure the wolves to one place so that she can evaluate everyone. Saren hesitates at first, but eventually follows his lead, leaving Youngman on his own. Now, he has no one to rely on but himself. And his only thought is to run away. His thoughts are interrupted as a wolf appears in front of him, growling with sharp canines ready to tear him apart. Youngman's face is drenched in sweat, and terror grips his entire body. The blood wolf is after him, attacking with its claws and leaving a scratch on his cheek. Youngman quickly moves away, desperately searching for something he can use to defend himself. Luckily, he finds a sturdy steel bar, although it turns out to be flimsier than expected. Another wolf appears, making it 2 against his feeble weapon and trembling hands. At this point, Youngman doubts he can survive the next attack. It seems unlikely. Meanwhile, Saren is doing her best to protect the civilians, visible on Youngman's back. He furrows his brows, wishing he could use his recently acquired ability to help. Youngman's eyes widen in alarm as he realizes something. It was his own novel. The novel he had dreamt of writing for the past 2 years. If one remembers it clearly, the strongest swordsman in the novel possesses a sword that can cut through anything. All Youngman has to do is borrow that power. He lets out a loud yell, but he fails to achieve the immersion. The power gap is too large, and using his unique ability would result in certain death. He cannot risk it. Youngman looks at his flimsy steel bar in horror. Once again, the original author tries to immerse him, but it doesn't work. However, Youngman has a sudden realization. If he can immerse himself in the 7 heroes through his physical ability, he might have a chance. His eyes light up as he tightly grips the steel bar, recalling what he needs to do. He closes his eyes, imagining a character he could become. And voila! He successfully immerses himself. The tower represents a collection of stories and records. For example, if the tower's foundation is based on Greek mythology with Hercules as its owner, all the events related to him would manifest in real life. Right now, the heroes from Youngman's novel have become the owners of the towers. This means that all the people associated with them exist in reality, even if they are considered side characters. This time, you could see that he was very sure and confident. There's a character called Soldier Melon who works as a regular gate guard, but his name wasn't mentioned in the book. Gate guards have the job of facing many opponents even though they're not very strong, using their knowledge to the best of their abilities. The conditions for activating his special power have been met, so it's now activated. He furrows his eyebrows and narrows his eyes as he focuses on the wolves. He swings his steel weapon and attacks. Youngman is amazed that he actually manages to hit them. This helps him learn more about using his spear and his steel weapon in a clever way. His natural fighting skills are improving, and he has gained some temporary maneuvering abilities. He tightens his grip on the weapon and stabs it into the wolf's belly. Suddenly, the wolf starts bleeding a purple liquid, which is its blood. Only one wolf is left now, and Youngman is determined to finish it. The lone wolf runs away before Youngman can reach it, but he doesn't want to show any mercy today. He positions his weapon, calculates the distance and aim, and throws it into the air. Meanwhile, Saren is doing well with her ice abilities, creating blocks and crystals with bright blue eyes on the ground. When people see what Saren is doing, they are amazed and open their mouths in astonishment. They are captivated by her unique ability. Saren then leads the citizens and quickly guides them away from the danger, intending to go to Youngman. She's worried about Youngman because she thinks he doesn't have any powers at the moment and something bad might happen to him. However, she dismisses this thought and tells herself that Youngman, who is also a cadet at the academy, must know a thing or two. Before she can worry any further, she finds Youngman. Her eyes widen in alarm at what she sees. The purple liquid is all over the place, the wolves are lying on the ground, and Youngman is standing in victory. All the bloodthirsty wolves summoned by Everton's followers have been defeated, and Human, her boss, was the reason for their defeat. Saren can't believe what she's seeing, she has to see it with her own eyes. At the same time, Youngman lets out a sigh. His cheeks are red, and sweat starts to trickle down his chin, ending the special power. As soon as the power ends, Youngman collapses on the floor. He's awake, though, it's just that his body is exhausted from releasing so much energy. Despite feeling tired, a smile appears on his face. At least he successfully used the power correctly. He has now mastered the first level of the fighting technique. In the near future, he will learn how to activate his upper body muscles. However, he has already used more strength than his body can handle in the previous battle. As a result, there will be consequences for forcefully increasing his strength. Youngman's face starts to show a sour expression. The pain he feels is so intense that he loses track of time and space. It feels as if countless knives are stabbing every part of his body. He screams louder than he ever has before in his life. In a hurry, Saren checks on Human. Her face shows panic and concern. She asks if Youngman is hurt. Youngman tries to smile a little to hide the pain and says, "It's just muscle cramps. It's been a while since I moved like that." Saren asks him again, worried, and helps him sit down. Out of curiosity, she mentions that Youngman claimed he didn't have any special abilities while he was at the academy. But based on what he just did, it seems otherwise. Youngman's heart skips a beat as he wonders if he really did all that, if he truly killed all the bloodthirsty wolves from before. He looks at his hands and sees scratches and bruises from the wolves, along with the deep purple liquid. With those hands, he was able to fight something he thought he would never be able to do again after leaving the academy. And most importantly, together with Saren, they saved many lives. He tells Saren that his body started moving on its own when he was backed into a corner. He believes that the training he received at the academy was truly helpful. Saren, however, is still confused. She still doubts what Youngman has told her. Youngman is happy to know that he could use the special power on the side character. This means that if he's strong enough, he can borrow the strength of everyone in the game. When a sharp pain twinges in his abdomen, he realizes it's a side effect of his unique ability. Saren keeps convincing him that he's not okay and should go to the hospital to get checked. But stubbornly, Human says no and that a little exercise was enough for him. He can't keep using this unique ability if he doesn't have the stamina to keep going. He needs to work on that. The new day begins, fresh and pristine. At that moment, Youngman is lying in bed. It's not until his phone makes a sound that he wakes up. He opens his tired eyes to check the notification on his phone. It's from Saren, apologizing to him. Youngman wonders why she would apologize. His eyes widen as he realizes something shocking, something he needs to confirm himself. But as he tries to get up from his bed, the pain in his muscles flares up. He's stunned, his jaw drops, his eyes nearly pop out, and he starts sweating profusely. In the end, he falls off his bed. Poor Youngman, he tries to ease the pain in his head when he notices his phone. Panic sets in as he sees that he has 32 missed calls and 92 messages displayed on the screen. What's happening? Instead of worrying too much, he decides to call Saren and ask for a clear explanation. As soon as she answers the call, Saren apologizes. Wolves appeared. Academy cadets saved the day. It's the headline of an article that Youngmin is currently reading while talking to Saren on the phone. There's even a picture of him standing with his legendary steel weapon. Saren explains that she tried not to mention what happened at the supermarket because Youngmin seems to dislike his connection with the academy. However, somehow it became a big deal and was uploaded within a day. Youngmin wonders about the rapid escalation of the issue. Why do you think the creatures suddenly appeared somewhere that wasn't a dungeon? Something is definitely changing in a way that's different from before. After reassuring Saren that everything is fine, Youngmin scrolls down the page and reads the comments left by others. Some people don't like him, but there are also others, especially those at the mart who experienced the situation firsthand, who are grateful to him. A mother even showed her appreciation through her words. The idea of helping others made him feel embarrassed. However, he couldn't help but feel happy that some individuals had faith in his abilities. His daydreaming was interrupted when messages appeared on his screen. Most of them were from people at the academy. They wanted to meet him, but the most important message was from his previous teacher. Have you awakened your skill? The message asked. His expression changed suddenly, and a feeling of sadness filled his room. He couldn't believe that someone would actually want to meet him. When did they start showing interest in him? Saren, who had been talking to herself on the phone for a while, interrupted his thoughts. Saren offered to treat him 10 times. Youngmin was a bit surprised, but it wasn't her fault. Taking advantage of the offer, Youngmin asked Saren if she could treat him to something expensive. She agreed, and Youngmin ended the call with a sly smile. After that, Val, there are some things he needs to do now that his body has improved. He must come up with a way to use his special talent. A smile of encouragement appears on his face, and his bright blue eyes shine. He hurried to the bathroom, took a quick shower, changed into fresh clothes, and headed to the train station. He wore a brown jacket, black pants, and brown boots. As he sat on the chair, he looked at his phone. Borpich, who was ranked 76 worldwide according to the article he was reading, couldn't access the Sword Master's tower. Many skilled individuals, when the towers were first created, attempted to attack the tower. Those who succeeded were either given new skills or elevated to positions of power. However, the tower has recently become more difficult, making an assault impossible at the moment. Nevertheless, those who are attempting to challenge the tower haven't given up. It's a mystery to see how they keep trying despite their failures. Youngmin wondered if they were stubborn. On the other hand, there's a saying that suggests one can succeed in life even without joining a team, which makes sense to him. People in the comments were happy that Borpich didn't make it to the tower. One commenter even called him half crazy after watching him mess up his interview. Youngmin found it strange that no one, not even high-ranking individuals, had been able to enter the Sword Master's towers so far. After walking for a few minutes, Youngmin reached his destination. It looked just like the tower he had imagined. Without hesitation, he entered the place to get a closer look. Realizing he had to climb at least 100 stairs, Junshio suddenly understood that not exercising enough would be his downfall. Finally, he managed to reach the place without getting lost, although he was exhausted and sweating. He wiped the sweat from his face. He was so tired that he could have slept for a whole week right there on the floor. But when he saw what was in front of him, his eyes lit up. Despite his exhaustion, he felt immense happiness. He walked towards it and touched the surface. It was a large rock with unknown writings engraved on it. Touching it would connect him to the power of one of the 7 heroes. His moment was interrupted when someone called him from behind. He raised his eyebrows and opened his mouth in surprise. It was a man with brown hair, fair skin, and a stick in his hand. The man noticed it was Youngmin's first time in the tower and advised him not to touch anything recklessly as it could be dangerous. Touching any item in the tower could invite a person inside, which is why ability users avoid touching things randomly. Fielman put on a fake smile and reached out to the writings anyway. He insisted that everything would be fine because there was no way he would be invited into the tower. But the truth was, he couldn't be invited inside because he was incredibly weak. So, is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think? and the fact that he would run away if he were ever invited inside the tower. #bitter. Suddenly, the tower emitted a blinding light. The true owner of the 7 towers resonated with the tower. Yeoman's face turned pale, his eyes widened, and his lips trembled. In response, the owner of the tower invited him in an instant. His surroundings changed, and he found himself alone in a green grassy area. Meanwhile, before Yeoman was invited into the tower, a man sat on a throne, observing Yeoman through a hologram. The man was puzzled by Yeoman's presence in the tower area. It seemed strange to him. Based on Yeoman's mana, he concluded that he was just an ordinary person, but it still bothered him. He needed to find out more, so he thought of ways to do it. He smiled and the light reflected in his eyes. He decided to call Yeoman inside the tower for a little chat. He raised his hand, and instantly, the sword that cuts through the horizon invited Yeoman to the first floor of the Swordmaster's tower for the first time. That, my friends, is how Yeoman ended up in that place. Mal, a test is about to begin. Its difficulty is unknown, as well as the rewards. But one thing is certain, Yeoman is in big trouble. Catastrophe-class monsters will wake up in an hour. He has to escape from the first floor before they attack. In short, he has to run for his life. At this moment, Yeoman was left speechless due to the shock. As he tossed his hair around like a mad person, he felt fear consuming him completely. A countdown indicated that a monster wave would spawn in 59 minutes and 59 seconds. It was impossible for an ordinary person without any attack skills to enter the tower. Until now, nothing like this had ever happened. There were moments in his life when he had to endure nosebleeds for hours just to make an effort to climb the tower. But in the end, he was always judged negatively. Students called him an unskilled attacker after he placed last in their practical tests. Even if he had awakened his unique ability, he couldn't attack the tower. Were they telling him to die? The thought made him pale. Suddenly, a hologram appeared in front of him. He was described as a scarecrow, looking funny, with a face that showed sadness. His face became even paler as he fell to the ground. His mouth dropped open, big enough to fit a basketball. He tried to hold back tears, and appeared as though he had seen a ghost. The hologram informed him that it had made the game easier for him to the best of its abilities and invited him into the tower, but he was disappointed. He could tell from his confused state that he was just an average person who got lucky. Yeoman's brow furrowed even more. He felt insulted, but he wondered if there was a way to lower the difficulty level. He asked the hologram if there was a way, and it responded by saying that it was his tower and he could choose to increase or decrease the difficulty. Yeoman was confused. If it was his tower, then according to his novel, he must be Eden. "Oh, do you know me?" Eden asked. "Of course, dear. Yeoman is the one who created you, but could Yeoman confirm it?" Maybe he was different now and knew something. Before he could even think of a way to confirm it, Eden started boasting. He said that he had become quite famous since the tower was created. "It's tiring if I get too famous, though." "Don't tire yourself too much, Eden," he sighed. In that moment, Yeoman confirmed that it really was Eden. Eden was the main character of the 7 heroes, a complete reflection of Yeoman, a boy without talent in mana but skilled in swordsmanship. With the help of his instructor, he awakened his mana, met some colleagues, and embarked on a journey to the Devil's Castle. After defeating the demons, he was hailed as a hero. Eden exceeded Yeoman's wildest imagination. That's why Yeoman loved him so much and favored him above all the other characters in his novel. Yeoman was overjoyed at the idea of talking to the main character of his own novel. On the other hand, Eden was annoyed because Yeoman wasn't listening and even had a creepy smile on his face. Yeoman's nose flared, his eyes widened, and his mouth hung open as Eden bid him farewell. Eden had invited him inside, but since Yeoman had already lowered the difficulty level, he had to try to escape on his own with a stroke of luck. Eden disappeared into thin air. Now Yeoman was alone, unsure if monsters would start appearing in a few minutes. He sat there, motionless, not even remembering to breathe. But did he have any choices? None at all. He closed his eyes and scratched his head. If there were any other choices, he would have taken them instead of sitting there like a lost child. He also thought that if he couldn't complete the task, the tower wouldn't have called him there in the first place. 10 minutes had passed since the countdown began. Yeoman pulled himself up from the ground. He was inside his own novel, so there must be a way. He had to remember all the information he wrote in the book. It could save his life. When Yeoman looked up, he saw a figure flying through the air. It frightened him. It was a dragon. Its body was red like fire, and its wings were thick and black. Yeoman realized at that moment that the tower didn't invite him to play so he could stand there frozen. If he did, he wouldn't stand a chance of surviving. In 50 minutes, powerful monsters would arrive, so he had to act and think quickly. Luckily, the dragon hadn't seen him. First, he needed to find a clue to figure out where he was. He stood on damp soil surrounded by grassy meadows. There were mountains in the distance, and the sun was still shining. He could use the sunlight to his advantage. With this information, he started searching the system's records based on the new details about the author of the story. Yeoman stopped when he felt something under his feet. He looked down and saw a single wooden branch. Looking around, he noticed multiple branches scattered around. He bent his knee and examined one of the branches. They looked like wooden swords. Upon closer inspection, he realized they were useless even for practice. The shape of the cut was strange. As he examined the wooden sword in his hand, he noticed an engraving on the surface. It had Eden's written on it. Yeoman's face lit up with joy. He had obtained an additional clue, Eden's destroyed wooden sword. Without a doubt, he was in the first episode of his novel. He was currently on the first floor of the tower, the place where the talentless boy awakened as a genius. The ground he stood on used to be Eden's training ground, where he practiced making swords, which explained the scattered pieces of wood. It was the beginning of the story in his novel, called Eden's Awakening. Then reality hit him hard. He felt deceived. Eden had told him that the difficulty level was lowered, but he had lied. What a liar. Even with all the information he had gathered and his preparations, did he stand a chance? He doubted it. Yeoman cursed into the air. He summoned all the bravery he could muster and tried to convince himself that somehow it would work, because dwelling on his misfortunes would only waste time and make him more miserable. Firmly grasping the piece of wood, he drove it into the ground. As he stared at it, his eyes widened. At first, he seemed alarmed and shocked, but then he felt satisfaction. He had found it. Yeoman dug a hole in the ground and retrieved an unknown plant. His excitement couldn't be contained. However, after thinking he had struck gold, his expression turned to disappointment. He slumped his shoulders and made a grimace. But there was a good chance that the plant could permanently increase magic power by 1. Despite its ugly and disgusting appearance, the plant was called Scourge Leather Core. It was a rare and exquisite plant used for spiritual purposes. Its cultivation was limited to places with uncontaminated mana. Yeoman paid no attention to its unappealing appearance. He believed it was hard to find, but now there were at least 50 of them scattered around. And since it looked like fiber, he assumed no one had considered eating it yet. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, and thanks for watching.